So, in order to do financially well in this world, it's all the same stuff, right? It's making all of these sort of little tiny decisions where you forego something that you really want today for the future. And it's not just one decision, right? It's not like I'm not going to buy this car, or I'm not going to buy this house, or I'm not going to go on this vacation. It's all of that stuff all the time. And I think people forget about that. But, here's the thing that I want other people to remember, or a lot of people to remember, is that you don't have to do that all the time. And you have to, in the sense of like continuously do this, what you're trying to do is look to manage and level out your wealth over the long run so that you can do financially well over a long run. So you don't want to do this. I mean, obviously, if you live in a tent for the rest of your life and become a CEO of a large multinational corporation, you're going to have tons and tons of money. But what you're sort of doing is balancing what you can actually afford in your life. So an easy way to think about this is to think about ratios and how much you're actually bringing in and how much you're spending over time, right? So allocating a certain ratio of how much you're bringing in to things that you actually enjoy and that you love and that you want to do, and the minimal that you can live off of. And I'm not being like over the top with this at all, and this is a hard thing for many people to understand. Really, really hard thing to understand. You can live in a tent and you can eat rice and you would be totally fine. And it doesn't, and you can live in a tent in the Arctic and still be totally fine. um, it will be rough. It will be hard. It's not going to be easy, but many people have done it before you, many, 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 many times, and you can live off of, rice and beans, and live off of squirrels and all of that kind of stuff. So that is your minimum, right? And you can also get by with your feet. You can get by with a bicycle if you need it. But even a bicycle is something that's expensive for some people. So I want you to have that sort of perspective in mind. What is the minimal that you can get by with, and figure out a way to survive? So anything that's above that, so whether it being having a room in a house, you're renting a room in a house, which I did for many years. That's what I did. And I'm not, any of this kind of stuff is not something that I have not done. So I completely understand all of this kind of stuff. I rented a room in a house. I remember one of them where I remember renting many rooms in basements. Um, and you do that for, I don't know, 8 months or a year. That's when I was in college. When I got out of college, I rented an apartment with my wife. Well, at that time, it was my fiance, and it was probably a little bit too big an apartment that we needed, but at the same time, it was something that we could afford, and I think we could have done a little better. There's like little tweaks. I look back and there's like little tweaks what we could have done, but we actually did okay, right? So cutting back on some of the things and having slightly smaller places to stay. One mistake that we did that was a royal screw up that we shouldn't have done is we bought a brand new car when we started out. We bought a Honda CRV, which was very practical. And the reason why we made that choice is I did the financial calculation where I looked at, how much it would have cost to buy a CRV brand new versus secondhand. There just is not a lot of CRVs in the market to buy that. So we justified buying the CRV brand new and getting a lease, um, and we justified it as like this is like the only thing that we could have possibly have done. But here's the thing, we did own it for like I think 13 years after that, so we did get quote unquote our money's worth out of it, but it was still an expense that we probably couldn't have afforded. What we should have done is looked for a Civic, a Corolla, and had a Corolla that was maybe 5 6 years old. That was inexpensive. Now, I think like this. The other thing you have to be well aware of, it is a family choice. It's a life choice that you work together. So a lot of times when you're in a relationship, there's compromises that you actually make, right? So this was something that my wife felt strongly about. We had many conversations, quote unquote conversations, um, and that was something that we did, and that is something that we sort of, I agreed with it, and I think it was, right for the time. But looking back, I think we could have cut that back. Now, there has been other things that we maybe could have cut out, but at the same time, they're important to life, right? So vacations, right? You can cut those out. Um, I'm actually a big believer in having vacations, and the reason is that that's how you build relationships. That's how you build, that gives you purpose to live in this world, right? So I'm a huge believer in having at least a day off a week, um, and I'm also a huge believer in having vacations, and having a significant number of vacations where you take some time off from work, time off from your life, and go do something, because that is what we live for, right? We can go our entire life and not having a single vacation, but I don't think that that is healthy. You look. Anyway, sorry about that. Life happens. So yeah, it's just about making all these little decisions where you're thinking about foregoing pleasure today for tomorrow, and you constantly are doing that and thinking about how you can do that longer, and to the point it actually makes sense, right? Like we bought a new car right now, and I know that I could have spent this on other things that will allow us to grow wealth, right? And allow us to do better. I know that right now it is a decision that we thought about, but it's something that we will really struggled with, right? Like, or something I struggled with, because I know that if we invest it, that if we invest it in I just do S&P 500 index funds, as well as mutual funds that we have, through work and things like that. Just regular, nothing fancy in any sort of way. But if I invest it and we invest it for 10 years, what we paid on this car could turn into a significant sum of money, which allows us to, do even more stuff. But after a point, you allocate some money to frivolous stuff. And it doesn't, even when you're not, you don't have, as much of an income as we do, obviously, as a professor, and this is how we sort of lived, is you sort of think about how to allocate your resources such that there's a portion of it that's just for frivolous kind of fun stuff that you do. So we did, even when I was in graduate school, and, we were struggling as students and stuff like that, we would go out for ice cream every once in a while. We would do these kind of things. But now that, we've been doing this lifestyle for a long time and we live off of well below one income, and we do that as a family. And both of us work, and we're doing so because that allows us eventually to do some extraordinary things. That's why we're doing it, so we can be extraordinarily generous and do really cool things like build a whole reciprocity project. All these kind of things. It just allows us to be better human beings, basically, by doing some of these things. So what I would like to do, or that I suggest, is that you always have some things that you're doing that are fun and that are enjoyable. But, me buying this new car at this point is at a point where I can run it off a cliff and it doesn't affect us in any sort of way financially. And I could do that, we could do that every year where we can run it off a cliff. And that is completely the position that you should be. If you lost your ice cream cone, you're not going to be that upset financially. It sucks, obviously, because you lost your ice cream cone, but it's not going to ruin you. And that's the way that you should be thinking about sort of frivolous things, to the point that, it gets to the point where it gets larger and larger and larger, as you're doing it and as you're investing and sort of foregoing things today for tomorrow. And that's where I want to leave you with, is that you could do this. Just keep it up. It just takes an awful lot of time and effort, and keep foregoing pleasure today for tomorrow. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.